Yeah, Cindy, we know standards plays a big role in test development. What are some of the things that would help people understand that there are many standards that contribute to how a standardized test is developed?
Sure. There are a number of standards that relate to both testing and the development of credentials, such as certification programs. Probably the two biggest, or the biggest standard, obviously, would be the international standard, ISO IEC 17024, which ANSI has adopted as an American national standard, so therefore it's referenced as ANSI/ISO/IEC 17024. There's also additional standards operating in the United States. We have another standard from the National Commission of Certifying Agencies, NCCA. They have developed their own standard, and there are certification bodies accredited to that standard. And there are standards that are not used for accreditation, but like the Joint Commission's standards for educational and psychological testing, that is a standard as well, although I don't believe anyone is actually using that to accredit organizations. But standards, the two standards that I mentioned, the two most popular certification standards, are the ones that are most adopted in the United States and accepted even by regulatory bodies. There are a number of regulatory bodies, particularly the ISO standard. There are a number of regulatory bodies that reference that particular standard as a mandatory requirement, including the Department of Defense.
Yes, I know that that particularly is true in the cybersecurity arena, where not only do you have to be accredited, but then you have other requirements that the Department of Defense requires. You know, we talk a lot about the building of examinations, but Cindy, there are standards of many types dealing with the administration of exams, right?
Oh, absolutely. Standards for the development of credentialing programs cover the full range of everything that a credentialing program, such as a certification program, would need to think about. Everything from how the test is developed, how the test is administered, and even the operations of the body itself, the certification body. What are their policies and procedures for their day-to-day operations for things like challenges, complaints and appeals? All of those things are covered in standards and should be covered in standards. So when a stakeholder chooses to go to an accredited certification body, as Rob said, it actually provides it provides third-party verification that that body is doing things the right way. It is the assurance, the quality assurance that that body has met the standard and is doing things the way they should be doing it. Doesn't mean that, as you said, that someone who is not accredited isn't doing it, but at least accreditation provides the assurance that all those components, everything from the development to the administration, the policies and procedures, have all been met by the certification body.
Again, one of the great benefits associated with an organization meeting a standard and demonstrating that they have met that standard is that other parties who don't know exactly the level of rigor associated with a program will then have a third-party independent proof that there is indeed that level of rigor. And if we look at that in the world of personnel testing, for example, associated with the ANSI ISO 17024 standard, then what that fundamentally means is that employees who happen to go after a particular credential, a certificate, understand that there is a high build quality, so to speak, associated with the credential, that the credential actually fully measures what they say that it measures, and that it's a credential that an employer can count on when it is time to take into account a known skill set in someone that they choose to hire.
Right, Cindy, we hear a lot about remote proctoring these days, about everybody having to not be able to get the exam physically but remotely. Are there standards that are being looked at in this particular area?
There are a number of standards that are being developed by a number of different bodies, some meeting the consensus-based process, open and transparent process, and others not. And that would include the Association of Test Publishers and the National Collegiate Testing Association. They together are developing a standard. There are additional ones, and even ANAB, ANSI's accreditation counterpart, they haven't developed standards because ANSI doesn't develop standards, but they have developed some criteria that they look for their certification bodies that are seeking to be accredited to 17,024.
We talked about the exam and we talked about the administration. Are there other things that accreditation looks at also?
As I mentioned, accreditation looks at not only the development and administration of the exam, but also who participated, all of the individuals, the expertise who participated along the way. It looks at the finances of the organization, not like in a financial statement, but more so the financial health of the organization to make sure that the organization has the resources to continue operating. It looks at the qualifications of the personnel who work in that particular certification body. It looks at the complaints and the appeals for that organization. How do they respond to those? It looks at the management system. How do they control their documents? How do they know that the staff are using the latest version of the document? It looks at how they continually improve themselves. What is their process for looking at their weaknesses and over the course of a year and on an ongoing basis, improving all of their processes. So it looks at every aspect of the certification body to make sure that it is a quality certification body and awarding a valid and reliable and legally defensible credential.
Yes, and I think particularly, I know in the ISO standard 17024, it looks at impartiality and objectivity. You can have the best certification program on earth, and if you're not administering your policies, procedures, and your standards in an objective and impartial way, then it doesn't mean anything. So standards play a major role in certification in this country, and it is the adherence of these standards that when we say that one has a quality credential.
You know, it's worth noting that even the people who are associated with ensuring that standards are properly met by testing organizations are themselves subject to standards associated with their own fair practices. So there's layer after layer to ensure that that bias and other factors that could degrade quality are noticed, that there are working systems in place to ensure that they are caught, so that everything works well and runs like a top.